Our speaker is Patty Moore. She's the president of the Paleo Preserve down in Ruskin. And somebody was, the Paleo Preserve folks, she'll tell you more about it, but it focuses on Florida fossils with a lot of stuff from the Leisey Shell Pit and the Leisey Shell Pit days. She's been a member of TBFC for many, many years. You've probably seen her, recognize her. She was at FossilFest. She's here about every month. And she told somebody recently, somebody told me that she said she's really nervous about speaking in front of us. And I said, well, I thought, well, tell her it's just the same friends we talk to every month, which is about 60 or 70 of us. So I don't know where the other 60 people came from, I'm sorry. So it made me be a little nervous. But welcome, Patty.
So, the way I start is thank you all for coming. Like I said, I am nervous about it, but I greatly appreciate everyone giving me the opportunity to be here. And you'll notice I have a brief up there, and that's more. I hope that it ends up being as much as you all want to see, but part of the problem with doing this presentation is, as Mr. Casey knows, there were many pictures taken, and it was very hard to eliminate pictures because they kept screaming at me, put me in, and I'm like, no, I've got to remember brief because I could go on for all night with all the pictures. But as I said, I appreciate this opportunity to share this history with you, as I feel it's important to know the beginnings, and I'm glad that John brought that in, how we all got started here. You'll notice on a lot of the signs it's approximate, and that is because the resources I checked, a lot of times the dates weren't the same, they differed. So it may be a little hard to read this text, and I thought I would go ahead and read it to you. It is coming from Frank Garcia from the Miracle of Cockroach Bay booklet. And tonight we have many copies available. Mr. Casey brought them in, and he has said we can hand them out. So we will have those copies available for people to take. I remember the first day I drove to the Leisey Shell Pit. Back in the winter of 1980 to 81, I took my good friends Cecil Philmon, John Clark, and Don Ward with me, and talked to Eric Hunter, who at the time was the manager of the shell operations there. Without any hesitation, he told me that we could search the mine for the fossil sea cow material sought. Little did we know that we were about to embark on one of the greatest paleontological success stories of all time in the United States. Frank did have a grant from the Smithsonian to search for sea cow fossils, but he maintained an interest in all fossils and hunted many areas, phosphate mines, shell pits. You get the idea from without hesitation how much easier it was to fossil hunt. This freedom, let's see if I can make this. This freedom was special and probably will not be that way again. And you also get this, that Frank has a flair for theatrics and the way he writes, and also he has a very good eye for finding fossils, so I think we can give that to him, that he does have a flair for drama. I often get asked when I have at the Fossil Museum, what is Leisey? Well, Leisey is the surname of Mr. Bud Leisey, and his company mined shell. Now, Mr. Leisey, from what I understand, has some ties to the Dickmans, and the Dickmans were people who kind of moved into that area down that's now known as Ruskin, and they formed a community there, and there was a lot of agriculture that was involved in that community. In fact, they even had patents for some of the machines they created. But after a while, this pit area had been a farmland, but I'm guessing it kind of got a little worn out, or maybe what happened is because the Indian mounds had been used up for construction shell, and they found that it would be better to mine shell from that farmland. There's also another benefit. When you mine the shell, you end up with a pond, and then you can sell waterfront property. And once again, I'm not totally clear on the date Leisey closed, but it did become Calusa. In fact, Dr. Bob says that in his book, that Calusa is actually Leisey, just rebranded. So where is Leisey is the next question I get. This is the way it looked some 30 some years ago. This is coming out of the Miracle of Cockroach Bay book, but it is also in the bulletins that the Florida Museum of Natural History published. They don't have it exactly like this. And this spot would be the Leisey Shell Pit 1A dig, and this would be the Leisey Shell Pit 3A dig, which is better known a lot of times as Baby Llama. This, I'm not sure. I know Dr. Hulbert told me there were about 3 or 4 digs that happened, and one would be 1B and 1A and all. So I'm not totally clear on that. But where it exactly is located, well, it's South Highway 41 in an area we refer to as Old Sun City now. It is not off from Leisey Road, which is a little closer towards Apollo Beach. And it is on Gulf City Road near Cockroach Bay. Now, like I said, this looks a little different now. And you'll see. Currently, it does look like this. There's a historical marker there, and the pit is submerged. Waterfront property there. It is, Tampa Bay Fossil Club was instrumental in getting this historical marker. And what I think is pretty cool too, and Dr. Hulbert found it very neat. I don't have his picture to show you guys tonight, but he wanted to see this sign and he wanted his picture taken next to it. He was fascinated with the fact that the roads around here, Paleo Point, Mammoth Trail, there is Smilodon Trail, I believe the name, and Lost River Trail. But he thought that was pretty neat that they had named the roads after the dig. I have as I said, I'm reaching out to Dr. Bob and to Mike and all because they put words in, they have explained things much better than I have. And this quote from Mike Searle, at the time this marker was being placed, he said, simply put, the Tampa Bay Fossil Club wouldn't exist if it weren't for the miracle at Cockroach Bay. None of the meetings, the field trips, or FossilFest would happen if the Leisey shell fossils hadn't been discovered. This publication wouldn't exist. And I'm going to show the newsletter Dr. Bob was just talking about with his picture on it. I think I can fairly say that we would not have all of Dr. Bob's wonderful books, or all of the finds he has made, or all the donations he has made to the Florida Museum of Natural History had he not had the opportunity to dig at Leisey. Why was Frank looking at this area? Well, he had this feeling, like I said, he has a good eye for fossils, and he kept having a feeling that there might have been a river there. And it was backed up by the fact that the Leisey and Casey's allowed him to look at the spoil piles, and he was finding a lot of camels and horses and other large mammals on the spoil piles. Sure enough, after the Florida Museum of Natural History investigated, and did their research, they said, this is a quote coming from their article, Leisey Shell Pit 1A was likely located in a coastal mangrove bay in an estuary of a major river, with both marine and terrestrial influences. The presence of silt in the bone bed suggests that they were deposited in a low energy environment. And the time period, I should mention that, it is early, I always have trouble with this, Devonian age, the Pleistocene. It's been listed anywhere from 1 million to 2 million, but they're usually saying like 1.5 million or 1.7 million years ago. It's interesting, I do have that poster for you guys to see from the Tampa trip, because they have it saying 2 million years ago, and I'm like, it's a little, that's not quite right. Well, I have to introduce some other key players in this story. They are very important. And this is coming from the bulletin. The tremendous success of the 2 major Leisey excavations would certainly have not been possible without the help of the Leisey Shell Corporation. The study of paleontology in Florida has benefited immeasurably from their generosity. This is Mr. Leisey here. He is, I think Frank often said it's hard to get him to just pose with a fossil, but he is no longer with us. But tonight we have the honor of having Mr. Bill Casey and Miss Leanne Casey with us right here in the front row. property? Well, the Leisey and Casey families provided equipment with operators. I don't think any of us know how to run a backhoe very easily. They provided equipment with the operators. They provided a storage trailer, money. Mr. Leisey's sister donated $5,000. They provided travel expenses for the scientists and people to travel up to Gainesville. And they ceased operations for the digs to take place. That meant they had to move their operations over. They weren't getting money from that area when the fossils were being hunted. So what does it look like? Not like this anymore, you know it's a pond now, but in 1983, this is what that hole in the ground looked like. And I really like using this picture for the kids because, and for adults too, because it shows, don't be afraid of climate change. We've gone underwater before. Here's the shell layer. Here's the bone layer when we're out of water, and here's the shell layer again, and then we're dry again. So Florida does a natural thing of sinking and coming back up.
Very good.
Yeah. But in this case, the pumps are running, so the water level is low.
Oh, we're not?
Oh, I wanted to let you know, right here, the bone layer itself is about 6.5 meters down, and that bone layer is 5 to 30 centimeters thick. Probably everybody has seen this picture, but this is the famous picture of Frank standing up. You can see the bone layer up real close. And this is June of 1983, and just like you heard tonight, where people go fossil hunting out west, that's what happened with, Frank wasn't around when this was first found. What happened was, Page Youngblood, who's the dragline operator, he had exposed this fossil layer just before he left for vacation. Frank was just returning from a Nebraska fossil collecting trip when he stopped by Leisey to get the news from Eric Hunter. The fossils are jumbled. No skeletons were found in articulation, but scattered associated fossils were fairly common. So, Frank finds this, they get super excited, they get allowed to dig. In fact, he lets the University of Florida know, but they're like, although the paleontologists at the Florida Museum of Natural History became aware of the importance of Leisey in 1983, their field work that year was concentrated on another site, Hale 21A near Gainesville, which ironically proved to be the same age, similar in age to Leisey 1A. But Frank wasn't going to let this go, and he had permission, so luckily Frank, Eric Fernandez, James Ransom, Ron Schrader, Don Ward, James Pendergraft, and others excavated starting in June through late 1983, and then donated fossils. And particular one I found interesting, the skull of Gymnogyps 40, which is the Leisey condor. Now I did not, like I said, I was trying to keep this brief, so I didn't throw in some of the other ones. You will be able to see, if you want to look in the photo albums, where these things were coming from. Basically, these guys, you know, they had overburden, so they were actually burrowing in and digging these out when they found them. So they didn't lay out grids at that point. They also didn't really label their fossils. This one does have a jacket. But they did donate, so that they got saved in the museum. But finally, the university is like, wait a minute, you guys are sending us a lot of nice fossils. Maybe we ought to go check this out. And they did. They came down as Dr. Webb, and then he's like, we need to meet, we need to talk. So in January, Dr. Webb and Frank met with the Leisey and Casey families to plan the dig, and word starts to get out. See here we have the Christian Science Monitor. This is in January of '84. It becomes a very hot topic. We have several newspaper articles. I know in the bulletin, Dr. Hulbert mentioned that it was widely covered by media, not only print, but also TV. And here is another article. I only put 2 in. I was trying to be brief. Thanks to Lee Gledhill and Debbie Porter, many of these articles were saved in scrapbooks, like I said, which I brought, and you feel free to look at them. There's a poster here that you guys can come up and look at, and it was printed by the Tampa Trib, and we have the order form. I don't think it'll work right now, where you can order that poster. So here comes the help. The Leisey and Casey's provided the large earth-moving equipment and the operators. They removed 2 meters of that overburden with heavy equipment, and the remaining with a bulldozer to avoid damaging the fossils. Thanks to Sue Badishpa, and she is the person right here. She is surveying the finished overburden removal. We have a lot of photographs. She was the dig photographer. I'm not sure, I think that's Frank, I don't know the ID on the other person. The excavations at Leisey 1A were a cooperative effort between the Florida Museum of Natural History, the Tampa Bay Mineral and Science Club, and the Leisey Shell Corporation. There's no Tampa Bay Fossil Club yet. And Tampa Bay Mineral and Science Club sponsored the dig. I do believe they donated money towards it. Florida Museum of Natural History didn't really, they brought in their expertise and their, hey, do it this way, hey, try and do those things. They did not spend a lot of time down here. You do see the layout of the letters, and there'll be numbers in the other direction to start laying out the grid system. Now we have grids. I'm amazed at the fossils there. Unlike the 1983 excavations, the site was gridded in 1984. Positional and other tectonic data were recorded, and extensive samples of sediment were collected for screen washing. It's coming from Pratt and Hulbert in 1995, they said that. However, there was more emphasis placed on collecting than labeling every fossil. So they might not label everyone in here, they might pick out a few that they labeled. The reason for that is, you gotta think about it. They were digging from June till September. Time was short. They didn't, they had volunteers. Not all those volunteers returned every day, so there was, how do I do this? They were, dealing with amateurs, which is fine because it was important to have help. But they also, during the summer, you gotta think about where the weather was going. That's why it was important to get the fossils collected. And here we go, our first day, April 1st. I think that's funny, they started on April 1st. In 1984, the first day with volunteers. They line up to begin the historic task. The volunteer effort was coordinated by Frank Garcia, Rudy Johnson, Mickey Fowler, Tony Estevez, Ron Schrader, Sue Badishpa, Red Tinkner, and Don Ward. I'm sure there were other people. This is who I come up with. I know at our museum, we have an enormous placard with a lot of volunteer names on that. Okay, Frank might have been not as nervous as I am, but he did say he got pretty nervous. It hit the big news. So Brian Gumbel from New York interviewed Frank down here in Tampa. It was on TV. And it was interesting to read, and that was April 5th, so it was just 4 days after they had opened up. But the local news also covered him. NBC, ABC, and CBS were filming. You can imagine the high people felt being the center of attention. This was happening in Ruston, and it was being reported all over this country. I think even some got reported outside of the country, but that had to be, to think of, I get to be a part of this. And look at that. The public interest in the Leisey dig was satisfied by having them have their own public viewing day, and that's Mickey Fowler lecturing the open house crowd. My understanding is Mickey actually stayed on site at nighttime to provide security. Frank said when he was filming, he would say, "Look busy, look like you're doing something." But I think too, from what I've read recently, they may have been starting to remove the overburden. They were doing a trench area and removing the overburden here, and that's why they're all lined up like that, because later on when they're actually in their grids, they are not quite as close to each other. But you get to see people of all ages were helping. All walks of life. They had doctors, they had, teachers, everybody came out to help as much as they could. as you can gather, we've got a parachute here, and a lot of people in shorts, swimsuits, it's hot. A couple of weeks were taken off due to the extreme summer heat, but people tried to stay cool. This guy, for some reason, doesn't seem to be as bothered. He's outside of the shade, he's got a hat, he's got long pants, he seems doing okay. I'd say he's really dedicated in the heat. But despite the hardships of the high temperatures, the humidity, the thunderstorms, and mosquitoes, the summer of 1984 is fondly remembered as one of the most enjoyable and productive in the history of paleontology in Florida. From what I have learned in volunteering, this is like the only time a dig like this happened, with this number of people, this amount of coverage. And of course I had a right to be, as you'll see, the fossils that were there. Frank got involved in digging too. That's his favorite fossil hunting tool, and is right next to a saber tooth. But this just amazes me, how rich it is in fossils. There's so many there. In my fossil hunting, I've never seen vertebrate fossils laid out like that. I've seen echinoids, but I've never seen that many fossils laying out. Like I said, it's hard to pick pictures, but I pulled this one out because I'm like, just look at that. How much there was there. It's amazing, and they do say that Leisey Shell Pit 1A was an extremely rich concentration of vertebrate fossils. As you heard Dr. Bob say, they have a lot of fossils at the Florida Museum of Natural and History. They come from Leisey. 2 tractor trailer loads of fossils went to Gainesville from Leisey. I think more have gone later on, and of course the ones prior to in 83, those. But here, they also collect a lot of sediment. I'm wondering if this might be sediment. At first I thought it might be jacketing, but I didn't actually see the way that the jackets. I mean, they've got some foil over here, like they might do a foil jacket. But I believe these are probably sediment packs being prepared to take up to the museum. But this does give you an idea. We have the L there. I know it's real tiny to see. That's for Leisey. We have the plus sign, or sometimes it looks like an X. That is the high point. You know, they were getting position of these fossils. This was important because when they got them back, they were trying to figure out how they went together. But think back to that first slide with the collection boxes, how they were just kind of all thrown in there. But of course, when they really got taken to the university gets their number and their ID on it. This is a peccary, ancient pig-like animal, and like I said, shows the museum labeling. So, examples of species, and I could go on and on. I'm not going to do 203 species. I've actually seen anywhere from 100 to 160, and then another thing I saw, 203. But what did they find? 2 different kinds of llamas, all 3 elephants, 3 different horses, sloths, tapir, peccary, otter, beaver, deer, jaguar, saber cat, short-faced bear, Brewster's wolf, which is the precursor to the dire, fish, great white shark, bull shark, reptiles, amphibians, birds, flamingo. I was so surprised to see that flamingo was found out there, ibis, pelicans, a big goose, I think, a lot of different things. And this is way wrong, according to Dr. Hulbert, even though I've seen that quoted a lot. He's like, no, it had to be 50,000 at least was found there. But the sad part right here, so you see down here, September 1984, the dig is coming to an end, the official dig does. There's still a whole lot of excitement. Here, this is 2 years later, 1986, or maybe a year and a half. Frank is talking to Governor Bob Graham at the Florida State Fair about the cats of Leisey, the saber cats. Frank had received many awards too. His favorite son, I believe that would be of Tampa, the D.B. McKay Award. I'm not sure about what that was from, but the Hall of Fame from the National Lapidary and Mineral. He got a lot of awards in recognition because this, I like I said, it hit the press, it made a big impression. It was also, this is very valuable information for paleontology. It was very important to Frank to try and keep the fossils around here, but he also, you know, he'd not been working for a while, but there was a citizens group that formed. It's called the Quest for Tampa Bay's Time Machine, and they were trying to raise money to be able to buy fossils from Frank to be able to exhibit at Mosey. Despite a lot of fundraising, they did not make enough, and Mosaic went ahead and purchased fossils to display at Mosey. This is in October of 1986. So you probably think that it's starting to deflate, you know, we've been 2 years past the end of the dig, but Page comes to the rescue again. It seemed that Page had uncovered a large section of llama bones in the north side. Again, the Leisey Corporation graciously let the Museum of Natural History work the site. We had uncovered the world's largest accumulation of llama bones ever discovered anywhere in the world. Like I said, just when you think all the fossils have been found, Page Youngblood scrapes into the baby llama bed. It did have a lot of young fossils, but there were some of other ages, and they think this indicates, and this is fascinating to me that you can learn the history, they think this indicates a climate change, not a climate change, a severe climate event, like maybe a flood, a hurricane, that ended up drowning these animals. You notice down here, 6,000 of the 12,000 llama fossils in the Florida Museum of Natural History in their collection are from Leisey. I have to say this again, the tremendous success of these two major Leisey excavations would certainly not have been possible without the help of the Leisey Shell Corporation. The study of paleontology in Florida has benefited immeasurably from their generosity. Thank you, guys. Thanks for letting us be able to do that. So this is the way it started out for the Tampa Bay Fossil Club. This is from November of 1987. You'll see that. That was the first newsletter. Now this is our newsletter. But Rudy Johnson, who had been the volunteer coordinator, became the first president. And I really think what happened, you know, you have your highs and lows. And thank goodness for Page finding the baby llama bed, because that was another high. And then coming off from that, I think they felt like, we got to keep this going. There's the camaraderie, I believe, experienced by the volunteers, being able to do things with people who had similar interests, the excitement of finding stuff. They wanted to keep it alive, so the Fossil Club started. With permission from the Caseys and Leiseys, the pit is open to amateur fossil hunters on the weekends for a fee. Just like John Miller was mentioning, you know, showing us this poster, it was open. And if you were a member of the club, I think that comes from Dr. Bob, you could go dig there for free once, and then the other times you had to pay.
It was only $10.
$10
To go dig in a world-class site.
Yeah.
And that money went to the Fossil Club.
Yeah.
It did.
It did not go
Yeah.
to the owner.
Wow. So I don't know if you heard that, Mr. Casey said that money went to the Fossil Club, not to the owners of the site. That money went to you guys. So Frank, I'm sure, kept digging, because he came up with a partial skeleton of a Remotherium was found by Frank. This is here my conflicting dates. So I see in one thing they say the skeleton was found in 1992, and then in another spot I have the claw was found in 1993. But regardless, maybe it was late December of 92 or something. Anyway, to me, this animal is so cool. We actually have a copy of this claw at the museum. And we have a femur ball, and I so use that femur ball when I'm teaching classes, when I bring them to the show and tell table, because I'm like, feel your hip bone. Now look at this hip bone. It's the size of a bowling ball. It's neat to see that. The next thing that happened is Frank got so excited, you know, with sharing fossils with kids, and he wanted to keep doing it. And his friends listened to that. Ernie Kindler, Debbie Dowling, and Jack Weldon formed the Paleontological Education Preserve, which is a nonprofit, a 501c3. And originally, it was formed in 1994 to purchase 120 acres near the Leisey Shell Pit for on-site digging and a fossil museum. And that, here is an article. This came out in the Tampa Trib in February '96. They had hoped to be able to open it in April of 1996 on Gulf City Road, but not enough money was raised to be able to purchase the land. They still want to keep the dream alive, and they were able to. Dolly Cummings of Camp Bayou offered a place for paleo. Another good thing happened, and this is a quote from Frank. At the Paleo Preserve, Ron Schrader and I get notice that we are about to receive a used portable school classroom from the Hillsborough County Schools. All we had to pay for was the transportation of the building. I managed to round up $2,000 from friends. Ron and I then saved a lot of money by building the glass showcases ourselves. Then Don Wilson of Wilson Excavation in Sarasota loaned us a truck and driver to transport all the shell material we needed from the Palooza Shell Pit, thanks to Bill Casey. So they created a pit there at Camp Bayou, right near this building, with material coming from the Palooza area. I think, so we have the one building, as we refer to it, building 6. Shortly afterwards, building 7 was brought in, and Fred often points out, lets us know, he helped build the display cases in that building. So this is the sign they also created. It's got horse teeth all in it. Carissa pointed out I need to pressure wash that sign because it's also got some other black stuff on it. But it's beautiful to me to show the kids these horse teeth that were sunk into that sign. So why is Leisey so important, and why is its legacy so important? These are the reasons, and there are probably many more, but it is a fossil site of major scientific importance. The quantity, the quality, and the diversity of the fossils that were found there. It is the best example of cooperation between avocational and professional paleontologists in the state. It was the first record in the eastern United States of Pterotonus incredibilis, which is a giant predatory bird, sort of like a giant condor. Its wingspan was 12 feet. And it was the first record they had of that one in this area, because most of the time they're out west. At the largest, most complete sample is Smilodon gracilis, the graceful saber cat. That's what I like to call it, the little saber cat. The first published paper, I mentioned this about the Leisey condor. Well, the first paper they published about Leisey fossils was about the Leisey condor. And that was in 1988. And we all know how we got here, the creation of the Fossil Club, because of Leisey. It also was the formation of the Paleo Preserve Fossil Museum. And as I said earlier, half of the fossil bones in the Florida Museum of Natural History are from Leisey. This is important. The dig created the blueprint for future Florida Museum of Natural History digs. We would not have Dr. Hulbert had they not agreed to do digs the way Leisey was done. He said, I made that a contingency. I wasn't coming back unless we had volunteers at the digs. We had volunteer days and volunteers at the digs. Right there, the 2-part bulletin that was created, over 600 pages of research articles. And I know there's more research articles coming out because that was published back in '95. There's been much more stuff. The research continues because they've got new methods of testing teeth, the chemicals and everything. This is a quote from Dr. Bob, and I suggest you guys, that book of his, The Ice Age Florida, is wonderful. It's got so many neat stories in it, especially about Leisey. Please consider having it, buying it. The Leisey Shell Pit would eventually prove to be the largest Pleistocene fossil locality east of the Mississippi River. And I was going to be allowed to dig there. Many of the 200 plus volunteers that Garcia had gathered together to assist with the UF dig would shortly after found the Tampa Bay Fossil Club. I joined the club that first weekend. I went to the Leisey Shell Pit to dig. A life-changing decision that has provided me with great satisfaction over the last 25 years. You said it way better than I did, because you got to be there. So this is my little advertisement, and as I said, there are many more pictures in those books and in there that I neglected to put in because I didn't want to keep you guys here super long. But once again, as I said at the start, I wanted to share this story with you because it's important. My 11 years of volunteering for the Paleo Preserve Fossil Museum has shown me that this history needs to be kept alive. This museum fulfills an important role in educating the public, especially kids, about fossils. You wouldn't believe how many people come and tell me, I didn't know this was here. I didn't know we never had dinosaurs. I didn't know. I'm asking you to volunteer as a Saturday docent or as a field trip teacher, because I can't keep doing this forever, unlike Fred. So I need people to be able to keep sharing this with the kids and the adults, to let them know about the history and how all this got here and how important it really is. These fossils could have been lost if the Leisey Corporation hadn't been supported. It's up to you to not let this legacy disappear. Honor those who supported the Leisey Shell Pit dig by volunteering. Keep the Tampa Bay Fossil Club, Paleo, and the Vertebrate Paleontology Department strong by volunteering. The person you share fossils with may become the next Dr. Bob or Joe, because we do have kids come in, and I know it probably excites them. I have a volunteer who actually brought her class out to Frank, out there on Gulf City Road. And I've had people show up at the museum and say, my Girl Scout leader took us out there for a dig. So I know it makes lifelong lasting memories for these people. And I had to put these guys in. I love these little saber cat. And like you don't have to have fossil knowledge, because I'm looking at this going, what is, oh yeah, that's a mammoth, a baby mammoth. And right there is a sloth claw. I've done a lot of learning on the job, and I still have a lot to go. But Barry had asked me to say this, and I said, I will, Barry, but it was near the end. For any of you that were present at Leisey, I know John has been up and brought his piece. Please share your stories about Leisey, because I didn't have the chance to be there. I'm old enough to have been there, but I wasn't there. But I want all of us to learn so that we can later share with other people. And that is it.
Point I wanted to make, the Little Manatee River used to pass through that area, and that's why there was such a concentration. And the next question I always get, why don't you let the fossil hunters into the pits today? And I have absolutely nothing against the concept, except we don't have the fossils. Barry, I let him come out here on a frequent basis and look around, and yes, he finds some turtle shells and stuff like that, but there's not the big prolific mass that we had before, and there's not anything but the heat. There's not the pleasure of getting the fossils. And so, but anyway, it was a very exciting time. And one little anecdote I want to share though. My son, he's about 52 years old. He was about 10 years old at the time. But anyway, and he was a fossil hunter. And there was a group of 3 or 4 high school teachers that wanted to come out and hunt. And Frank Garcia was obligated to go appear on television, and nobody was allowed to be on, was available to escort those 2 ladies except for Craig. And so he told them, no background at all. He just said, go down to the site, go in and ask for Craig Casey, and he'll show you where and how to dig. And these were very offended ladies when they got down there, found a 10-year-old. but the knowledge at young age sticks, and it works. And we're just real happy to have been a part of it.
Field trips. Before, Fred, you want to go first, but before you start talking, stand up and come up here. Fred turns 88 tonight at midnight.
Oh my God.
We did not get candles because you got mad about that last year. So come up here behind this case and get a picture. Anybody will sing with me? His name's Fred. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Fred. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, everyone. I hope to still be standing here when I'm 98. 88, that's a good number, but I'm gonna better that. Can I go ahead with my report?
Please.
I'm the field trip director. We go to the river. We go to Wachula, the nice park there. I Google the river level at Zopho Springs, Florida, because there's a gauge there, and I know by what that gauge says where the river's going to be. I talked loud enough, but that's okay. So I typically like for the gauge to say 6 feet, because I know where we hunt it'll be 3, 3.5, maybe 4, and it'll be okay, for children especially. Well, today the river is sitting at 7.4, and as I was looking a while ago, it's going straight up. So it seems very unlikely. In fact, well, I guess I'll just have to cancel next Saturday's trip. The river is not likely to be low enough. It doesn't drop that very fast. And the river at that level is so fast that by the time you get your shovel up, everything's washed off of it. You don't have time to look. So hopefully October it'll come back down, and I'll mention that at the next meeting. But no, next week I think is washed out now. Thank you, folks. He won't let me.
So we like to do show and tell each month for you new folks. It just shows that, I mean, some of the stuff's gonna be pretty impressive, but some of it's just stuff people find. And it just shows that you can go out, get your permit, go out digging in the rivers, screening, scuba diving, and you can find this stuff as well.
So I haven't been diving this summer due to personal reasons, but that allowed me a lot of time to work on the previous winter's accumulation of projects, which usually get just put on the back burner for years and years. This is a mastodon tooth I found back in March or April of last year. I brought it in with it still cracked in half with big gaps in the chewing surface, but I've managed to stabilize it fully and repair the damage on it. So this is one of the lower teeth. I think it's the lower right tooth. And this was completely encased in clay in the river bottom. And that one, everyone's already seen. But this one, I did not bring in because it was in considerably worse shape. I mean, there were big holes missing in the chewing surface here. But this was the one that alerted me to the other teeth there, because you can see a clear delineation in where it was exposed to the river versus what was sunk down in the clay. So this side is dark and tannin stained, and this side is bright blue and really pretty. It's definitely one of my favorite fossils, because anytime you can see that transition of where something was just barely peeking out into the river, I find that really cool. But that's another one of the lower teeth. And then I got the upper tooth, again with really pretty colors because it all came directly out of clay. And the M2, the second full adult molar from the upper skull, and they fit together kind of like that. Really weird, almost backwards chewing surface on this guy, on this front tooth. The roots on this one unfortunately turned into powder, so the next time I go back to that site, I'm hoping to make like a foil jacket or something underwater to save the next one, because this one just turned into pieces no bigger than a nickel, because of how delicate that stuff is preserved in the clay. But they have 8 teeth in their mouth, and I have 4 of their teeth, so I have about half of this animal's full dentition So I'm excited to get more this winter.
Mike Davis, you wanna go next? That's his,
All right,
Joe's stepdad.
Joe's a hard act to follow, but at least you didn't put me after Dr. Bob. So every year, a group of us goes out to Nebraska to do some fossil hunting. And this year we took a day off and we went ammonite hunting in Wyoming. And I'll tell you what, it's the hardest day of fossil hunting I have ever had in my life. The hardest full day of fossil hunting, and it lasted about 4 hours. I tell you, we were all whipped at the end of it. You were looking around on 60-degree slopes of very slippery, degraded slate, and you're looking for round rocks. You find a round rock, you hammer it. Maybe there's an ammonite in it, maybe there's not. We hammered a lot of round rocks that day. And managed to find some ammonites. Partial ones anyway. This one's still partly in the matrix. It started falling apart, so I stopped taking it out of the matrix. I'm hoping to have an expert do the rest of the removal from the matrix and maybe a little restoration. And here's another one I found, partial one again, a couple of partials. It was fun, like I said, it was very strenuous, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I think my wife agrees. I think we'd do it again in a heartbeat the next time we're out in Wyoming. So anyway, there's lots of stuff to find out there. So keep looking. I was hoping Rob would be here tonight. I was going to talk to
He
him.
is.
He is?
He's out with Cena getting his
Oh, I
first
see him
show.
now. All right.
There you go. Cena and Rob are coming up together.
I know this one I found. He won't do these show and tells, even though he found them.
I'm in charge of the meeting. I got other duties.
So it's an Oregon skull. Another one. We have quite a few about this size, but I'm happy that it's pretty whole, and you can see where it was exposed. And that's probably what I saw before I dug it out. And then luckily all the rest was buried. But that's Oregon.
Start again. I'm seeing this for the first time.
Yes, so am I. I didn't get to look at it real close. You can take this one out. This is a Horacidon, which is a running rhino maxilla, right? So the lower jaw. No, it's maxilla. He found it. I did not find this. His writing was on the plaster jacket, and then he also found this Titanothere tooth, which is first time seeing it too. Wow. So sometimes you see things so cracked up and messed up, and you're thinking, oh, it's already broke. You know, I don't want to pick it up. It's worth it. Pick it up. Somebody might know how to fix it for you. And then we went ammonite hunting, and I don't remember. Did I find the big one, or you find the big one?
Oh, you found a big one.
That's one. And then, pretty sure I found this one because it feels like the one that I hauled back. And you hauled it back. Carried it for a little bit, but that was the hardest fossil hunting I've ever done.
Mike Davis was just, when you were outside, was just telling how bad it was.
Oh gosh, that was the steepest. You felt like you're running up an elevator the wrong way, over and over. I know. But Bob's gonna need this room, right?
Yep. Johnny, you want to come up? Johnny Miller?
Great thing is, we all have something in common. We like things of the past. We're gonna jump on the bandwagon celebrating Leisey Shell Pit. Thank you to the Casey family, Fred Leisey, everyone involved. I made this up in the early 90s when we were still having our shows at the Armory. Hoping that I could get, and my friend of mine got an aerial shot for me. I printed it out. I was hoping to get people to say, to show where they found what. I thought it'd be interesting. So it's kind of goofy. Anybody that knows me, you know, it falls in line with everyone. So So I've got, probably 13 signatures. Bob's on here. Albert Fava, is he here tonight? Albert, you here? Yeah, okay. I don't have Jerry on here. I know Jerry hunted in Leisey, Barbara. But if you guys want to take a look and sort of see and find where you found what, it would be interesting to me. It's pretty ratty, but thought it'd be interesting to look at for those that are interested. And then my buddy and I, the club started, we got the opportunity to go down there on the first club trip. Wake up, cold, rainy, windy, and we're driving down, and we said a couple times, people aren't gonna come down for this, and there's not gonna be anybody that hardly show up, so that's just miserable. Kept saying it until we turned the corner. There were like 30 cars. And we were late, and it's like, oh my gosh, and we're all like kids in the candy store. And so when they said go, everybody went. A couple of people ran. I think one of them was Ernie Kendall. They just ran in before everybody else. But it was just fantastic. Again, like a kid in the candy store. And I got reminded pretty quick, it's really better to keep the mud outside your boot than in. Because it went down this hill, and it was, you know. So it was exciting. And as the years passed, we got to go back a lot, and I was very fortunate. And one thing that sticks in my mind is helping dig out. We just helped with the drainage, because it's another rainy day there, of gyrorem at their hip girdle. The hips were 5 foot across, just the hip girdle, 5 foot exactly. And it was exciting. It was just one of the other things that, you know, made it so great. And again, thank you for the opportunity, Bill and Bud, that brought up there. So, great, a great place. We're very fortunate. It's really the reason the club started, right?
Get your first party.
Yeah, it's I actually ran across, when we actually used to do cards, ID cards for the club members. And this was for the year '88. It was signed by the treasurer, the great Helen Cosini. And it has a saying on the back. And it's by George Gaylord Simpson. And so fossil hunting is by far the most fascinating of all sports. The hunter never knows what their bag will be. Perhaps nothing, perhaps a creature never before seen by human eyes. The fossil hunter does not kill, they resurrect. And the result of this sport, her sport, is to add to the sum of human pleasure and the treasures of human knowledge. So that always stuck with me.
So for all you young folks, maybe 20 years or 25 years, this is high tech. For him to show up at the show with an aerial photograph, I mean, that was, and printed so nice. Let's do Abby Haig.
So for the record, I am absolutely terrified standing in front of this giant crowd. This is Artex. He is a 4-month-old Allosaurus. Help.
Where did you get him?
That's a good question.
When was he hatched?
Oh, geez.
Does he make any noise?
You wanna make a noise? Can I get another one? There we go.
She's gonna be really popular walking around FossilFest next year.
Yes, I will have a booth at FossilFest. He will be there.
Will he be bigger?
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Her sales pitches, they grow slow.
Yeah, how much did he eat?
About 20 pounds of chicken nuggets a day. Dinosaur nuggets, they have to be dinosaur nuggets. I will do
chance you just got this, right?
Yes. I think, yeah, beginning of August.
There you go.
That sounds cute.
Connor Barnes. Our show tells not normally this long, but it's been a long summer.
Prelude what Joe was talking about earlier. So you are currently not allowed to collect from public lands artifacts of any kind. Very, very big no-no. However, you are allowed to collect from private lands with permission. So, kind of like a long backstory. My dad has access to a property. We've had access to it for many, many years. And it's within relative range of a river in North Florida. And for a while we thought, oh, well, there might be artifacts out there just because of where it's at, you know, in relation to a lot of other like significant sites that people have found. And a couple weeks ago, we decided to, you know, kind of test the hypothesis, see if we could find anything, and dug one test hole, and we right away hit charcoal and flakes. And we just kept going, and we just kept finding more stuff. And right now, we're kind of looking at maybe about like late archaic age transient camps. There might be multiple camps, we're not sure. We've literally only dug one test hole. So, but basically a lot of it is, I'll show you, pottery shards. We did find part of an arrowhead, tons and tons of flakes. A lot of it was a mixture between agatized coral and coastal plains chert. Like I said, I don't really know a whole lot about artifacts. I usually do a lot of fossil stuff, but I will tell you this is very exciting. I am excited to go out there and dig for more. But yeah, this is pretty neat. So I'll just leave this up here if you guys want to look at it. But any questions?
So, everybody wanted to go before Dr. Bob tonight. Usually they want to go before Joe, who did pretty well tonight as well. I want to say that there's a lot of folks in here who have made significant contributions to the science of paleontology. They found a lot of stuff that's been donated to Florida Museum of Natural History, the Smithsonian, Museum of Natural History, New York City. Very, very significant finds. He couldn't bring it all. Who all got the newsletter and saw what he found in the newsletter? Giant armadillo. It is by far not just the prettiest fossil I've ever seen. It is the best specimen of this species that has ever been found in Florida or the United States. And from my understanding from the Florida Museum, the next closest one might be, the next more complete or as good of a find might be all the way down to South America, where they're much more common. And I've tried to look up pictures of theirs, and while they do have a lot of whole ones down there, I'm not sure if they're the same species exactly, Sept, but they're not nearly as pretty. This is by far the best fossil you'll ever see at this show, and as long as I've been coming here. So come on up, Dr. Bob. And you don't need a microphone, I guarantee you that.
As I bring this up, first of all, quickly, Mike announced that there's going to be a trip to the Florida Museum. They have like, and I guess if you go to the collections thing, they have a whole huge section of nothing but stuff from Leisey. And I don't know if you're going to cover that or not, so I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. But at one point, Leisey was so significant, it was like 20% of all the finds from Florida came from Leisey. Now, that's 30 some odd years ago, but so if you can get up there, I'm sure she's going to show some of this stuff here. I was with Joe when he found those mastodon teeth and some ribs and a bunch of other stuff that goes with it, and I did not find diddly squat that day. I mean, literally a couple broken little horse teeth or whatever. So that's just the nature of it. And meanwhile, Joe was dragging this out and dragging out. I'm like, oh. So then I said, you know what? I need to get on my horse because I can't let Joe outdo me. So anyway, those of you that know me, I have property up in Steenhatchee River. Joe and I found an equisite that Holbert, I guess, did he talk about that already here? We're going to do a presentation on it. There were 9 Ice Age horses in that. Along with that was a giant armadillo that's transitional, and Joe found some of the foot bones, found a couple scoots, and I found a astragalus, which is an ankle bone, very different than the early the Homocena or the later Septentrional. So it will be a new species. And I said something to Holbert like, okay. You know, as it get, you know, named Cinnabaldi or whatever. We're not naming an animal after one ankle bone. So my critter started coming out. It was a breech birth. It was coming out butt first, and the tail came out. And then the next thing come out was this sacrum, which came out in several pieces. I got most of it together. Rob helped me get the rest of it together. He's the one that did Mike and Cena's stuff. He's really good with that kind of stuff. I'm pretty good about getting stuff together, but when you find something this nice, you want it to get somebody that's going to really, you know, make sure it's the way it's supposed to look. So, and that's a set of fused vertebrae that are at the bottom of your spine. Human ones don't look anything like this. The giant, all the armadillo family, just very bizarre animals, just like the sloths. There's nothing like that. In fact, these two pieces here I have, they come down and they have the hip socket, so the pelvis is attached to the sacrum. Who knew until I found this guy? Apparently the scientists knew. So eventually, I had brought anyone that came last year to our Fossil Club banquet pizza party. I brought one giant armadillo scoot that was unbelievably perfect. I found it at the edge of this, what turned out to be this site, and it was at the edge of the clay. I'm thinking, I need to get back in there because that thing has not moved. It's so perfect. So I went back in. I've done about maybe somewhere between, I have to look at my thing, 14 or 15 tanks, and this was sticking out. I got to get the way, figure out the way it was sticking out like this with the other femur next to it, and underwater, these were as bright and orange as the shirt that Cena has on right now. They were unbelievably bright orange. The clay was white looking. As soon as I would get them out on land, they turned really, really almost black, and the clay turned black. So tannic, I'm over 20 feet down. The river is tannic, which means there's a lot of tannic acid, so it's very dark. And when you're looking at red through or brown through the brown water, it filters certain things out, and you see other colors that you won't see once it comes out when you're just in natural light. So this is one of the two femurs. I only brought one of these. I gotta get it figured out. I think I brought both of these. These are the humerus. So this is the ball joint that would go in the arm. And everything that came out, the rights and lefts are just opposite each other. So both of these are just mirror image perfect. They haven't traveled probably nowhere from when this animal died. It's a sinkhole. It's really solid clay. To get any of this stuff out, each bone might take 10 or 15 minutes underwater because they're packed with the giant armadillo scoots all around it, and the clay is super dense. So as you find the bone layer, like, oh, I could feel, oh, it feels like it might be a humerus or maybe the ball from the femur. You're not really sure because there's no visibility. Once you start up, you're in zero visibility, 20 feet down. Got a crate next to you. So you start working all of the scoots around, put it in, put it in, put it in. So I have about 600 of the giant armadillo scoots. My buddy Andreas told me that there are 900 of them. Where's the rest? I'm like, you know, nothing's ever good enough for him. You just have to know. One of the giant armadillos, just like today's armadillos, they're really, really bizarre animals. This is a fused tibia fibula. Very bizarre. If you were to look at human ones, you would say they're nothing like this. Again, absolutely perfect. I didn't bring both of these. The other one has a crack here and a crack here because it was one of the first bones I found, and it was packed, and I thought the clay was kind of soft, and I worked the clay, and I thought I could wiggle it out, and I mean, if you wiggle it that much, crack, boom. So the stuff is, even though it's totally porcelain now, it is very brittle. Now we get to some of the better stuff. So, eventually, this came out in 4 pieces. The picture that's in the newsletter has a tooth missing, and 2 dives later I found the one tooth that was missing. We got that in there. I did have Rob put this one together for me. I do a lot of my own, I don't call it restoration, glue stuff together, this and that, but this was just too nice. So it is a killer piece. What's really bizarre about it is this bone here comes up under, and I'll show you a minute on the skull. it comes up underneath the zygomatic arch, and typically people slip this in, you put the skull on top and you display it that way. It is so curved that when this animal died and this jaw split in half, that once we restored it and he measured it and it's all perfect, we can't get these two bones in between the skull anymore to display them that way. But it's a killer piece, to say the least. And this piece, because by this time I had gotten really good at what I was doing, it was packed again, just totally packed around it with armadillo scutes. This piece came out whole except for one little section of the zygomatic arch. I had it loose, I thought it, and I wiggled it about, it has 18 lowers and 18 uppers, 36 teeth. There are 4 teeth missing in the front here. They're going to be down in the clay. So now I'm systematically going through my own debris clay, underwater, by feel. You can start off with some reasonable visibility. It's pitch black, so all you're seeing is the light. And then, so the debris pile I'm kind of able to go through if I don't stir it up. But the only thing missing on the animal right now are the 2 radius and ulnas and the 2 front paws. Everything else. When I sent the thing to Rachel, who's the new collection manager, in all capitals, her, I know we got a couple kids in here, but her comment was, holy crap. You know, and this is what she is doing for her dissertation to get her doctorate, is scanning these skulls, and she's had to get them from Brazil and Argentina. And then she's doing all the indentations, which means sloths, these anteaters, or whatever. But this is by far, it has the, even the nasals inside, so all whatever typical bones would have been in. You can see the ear bones. So it is just absolutely an incredible specimen. It is, I've been working on it. I have to look, I think since the end of June, I've probably made 4 trips up there. So 4 times 2 days, so 8 dives, of which they were 2 or 3 tank dives. So, you know, say if they're 2 tanks, I've done about 15 or 16 tanks. And this, I have 5 or 6 of these containers full of bones. All the backbone is there, and that's actually in the picture somewhere inside the thing. And the backbone abuts up to the sacrum. So very killer. Like I said, typically these 2 bones should slide in between, and they just barely don't fit. And I know Rob was really, really disappointed that we can't get that through there to put the skull on top. So we'll have to make some decisions. Possibly they might want to take this off, get it on, put it back on. I don't think University of Florida is going to mess with it because they just want to study the things. They don't care that the one doesn't go on the other. I, on the other hand, would. So I've already made an arrangement to probably donate this, although I made the arrangement before Joe and Andreas told me it was worth between $25,000 and $50,000. I was like, okay, might have had to rethink that one. But I am going to make a deal where they now have 3D scanners. I don't expect them to scan the whole animal. I would like them to scan these 2 pieces. It'll come back as whatever gray that they print these things out, and I'll let Rob, since he's handled these, paint them up. And when Mike did it with his bare teeth in Cena, you really can't tell. Unless somebody picks it up, put them in the Riker mount, you just can't tell the original from the fake. So I'm going to pack some of these back because she needs to think the presentation.
One question.
Yep. Do you have any questions? Oh.
When I saw that cover shot.
Yes.
I thought, where the hell did he get those beautiful cats? Because he wouldn't be holding the original up like that.
Yeah, well, I used to hold them up here on top. I know, but
And then I realized the preservation must be just.
the preservation, that's what everyone thinks, that they are the real thing.
I'll reach it in there.
Okay. Oh, that's my phone, sorry. Don't look at the phone, it says the Florida score on it. They're not doing well. But I don't have no idea what the final is, so.
And the money of what it's worth doesn't mean a lot to a lot of us.
No.
But those figures you're giving are, Bob lives in 1970. He had a flip phone and a jitterbug till a month ago. That thing's worth over $100,000 easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, well, yes, if you paid someone to make the mount for it, which would not cost another $50,000. Right,
The bone
yes.
is worth $100,000. What do you think, Joe?
That's a really pricey pile of rocks.
Yeah, so.
He said it's a pricey pile of rocks.
Anyway, so it's been fun, to say the least. I have found, people remember if you go back 2016, I found a partial mammoth, about 70% of it. I did not find the skull and the jaws. And I'm thinking, I'm never, as soon as I retired, I was like, man, I'm never going to find anything better than that. And then Joe and I found the equisite, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm never going to do anything better than that. And then this guy came along.
He had just told me on the telephone weeks before he found it that he made all this significant. He'll never find nothing as good as the things he's found before. And then I got the call.
Yeah.
So you keep going, you keep hunting, and
Yep.
Well, Bob, you'll never find something better than this.
I'll never find it. The clay layer is really significantly large in that sinkhole, and I did find a vertebrae from what Andres thinks is, it's as immaculate as this. It could be a peccary. So there could be minimally be at least a peccary in there also, which is a type of prehistoric pig or boar.
That's awesome.
So who knows?
so we appreciate that and congratulations.
Yeah.
So
Mike and them weren't here when I did the presentation a year and a half ago, and I talked about, in order for me to get on the cover of the Fossil Club newsletter, it took me, everyone was on the covers, there's little kids on the cover holding up a shark. I was like, man, I've been on the board, I've been president, I'm never on the cover. They brought a blood mobile, I had to give blood, and I'm on the cover giving blood. I had to give blood to get on the cover of the Chronicles.
I was not editor back then.
Maybe you weren't.
No, I was not.
Oh, okay.
So, thank you, Bob.
Yep.
Thank you. And please, we had some nice stuff tonight, but if you find a shark's tooth, it can be broken in pieces, we'll show and tell anything you have. There won't always be this much competition.